So I wanted to do a follow-up and tell you why you should not be listening to what many of the players, former players, and some of those in the media are saying about doping in general and also the Sinner case in particular. And I'm going to explain to you why there's an incredible amount of willful ignorance or a general laziness, never mind acting in bad faith when it comes to talking about doping. Now, as you can see here, just in this thumbnail that I posted, that have tweeted about this situation. Liam Broding saying, didn't realize you could reach a settlement regarding a doping ban. Interesting. Back in time for the French Open, I guess, talking about the timing. You got, of course, the ringleader of them all, Nick Kyrgios, saying, so WADA come out and say if you would be a 1 to 2 year ban. Obviously, Sinner's team have done everything in their power to just go ahead and take a 3-month ban. No titles lost, no prize money lost, guilty or not. Sad day for tennis. That is true. It is a sad day for tennis. But these people and the ringleader here is making it worse from tennis because he simply won't educate himself when he says fairness in tennis does not exist. And then you, of course, have the same cast and crew, Renee Stubbs, a very controversial figure. She's clearly not doing her homework. And then you even have Stan Wawrinka saying, I don't believe in clean sport anymore. In my view, these people are making fools of themselves. And then what makes it even worse is the media. There are many in the media that are just amplifying these voices and they're not challenging their assertions whatsoever. It's basically just for clickbait. They just amplify this nonsense with no challenging. And that's pretty much the state of our world in social media. And it's not only those people. You also had Novak Djokovic come out today and say some of this. Take a listen.
Consensus, or I would say a majority of the players that I've talked to in the locker room, not just in the last few days, but also last few months, that are not happy with the way this whole process has been handled. Majority of the players doesn't feel that it's fair.
Okay, so he says a majority of people don't like the way this process was handled. Well, I'm going to show you why, again, these players are not acting in good faith. And I'm not going to support the entire process and say that it's all working to plan, because there are clearly problems in the doping process, but not nearly as much as what these people are making it seem. Let's continue to listen to Novak a little bit more.
The players feel like there is favorism happening. It seems like
now he thinks there's favoritism happening. Again, I'm going to show you why that's not true.
It appears that you can almost affect the outcome if you're a top player, if you have access to the top lawyers and whatnot. So we've seen on the social media Simona Halep and Tara Moore and some other players that are maybe less known that have been struggling to resolve.
He's saying Simona Halep was less known. She was #1 in the world on the WTA tour. I don't understand his explanation.
Of their cases for years, or have gotten the ban for years. And I think, right now it's a ripe time for us to really address the system, because the system and the structure obviously doesn't work of anti-doping. It's obvious. So I hope that in the next period of the near future that the governing bodies are going to come together of our tours and the tennis ecosystem and try to find a more effective way to deal with these processes. So yeah, I mean it's inconsistent, and yeah, it appears to be very unfair.
All right, he said there, it appears to be very unfair. Again, because he hasn't probably looked into enough cases. And this is more of a feeling. And I'm not saying these feelings shouldn't be rectified and the general fairness shouldn't be addressed. But again, I'm going to show you why the authorities have tried to address it, but the players are just not paying attention.
The inconsistency is something that frustrates all the players. It's like if you are going to treat every case individually or independently, which is what's happening, then there's no consistency.
Well, that's how it should happen. Each case is different, and each case needs to be handled, will be handled a little bit differently. But there actually is a process in how this is handled. I'm not saying the process is the best process whatsoever, But people need to keep in mind there's only one thing that truly matters about anti-doping. It's to ensure fair play and that there's been no performance enhancement has been gained by taking a certain substance. At the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. Secondary to that is obviously a process and transparency in the process. But at the end of the day, no matter what happens, all you're really trying to achieve is that there's fairness in sports and there's not illegal doping that's affecting someone's performance, which clearly did not happen in Sinner's case. All right, now this might be the most surprising comment from a player, and it's from Alex Demonauer. He said, "It's tough because we have seen something which has never happened," he said. "In the past, it has always been a year or 2 years. It has always been much larger. It is something we have never seen, and I guess if someone else or the next person is in a similar position, I hope we will see the same option being allowed." So is that accurate, and does that actually hold up to scrutiny? And let's take a look. Marin Cilic in 2013, he tested positive for this drug right here, and he denied intentionally taking the drug, claiming it was glucose tablets purchased from a pharmacy while competing in France. The ITF accepted his explanation and instead of imposing the typical 2-year ban, handed down a 9-month suspension due to the low level of drug detected and the circumstances surrounding the case. And then there was Barbara Stradakova in 2013. I know I didn't pronounce that name right. Let's take a look at her. She tested positive for a banned substance as well, or a banned stimulant, and the ITF recognized her lack of intent to cheat and handed her a 6-month ban instead of the maximum 2-year suspension. And then there is the most similar case to Sinner's of them all, and it's something that you're going to see in an article that I'm going to show you regarding this player, Bortolotti. He also tested positive for the banned substance, the same substance, clostebol, that Sinner had in his system in very small amounts. And in short, they found that he was also accidentally exposed to clostebol and that there was no cheating. And he resulted in his prize money and his ranking points from the Lisbon Challenger have been disqualified. However, the player bore no fault or negligence, and no subsequent results of the player will be disqualified. So there you have already several examples showing that this has happened in the past. And there's actually one circumstance which was very similar to Sinner's, and it was handled in the same textbook manner that Sinner's was. All right, and there's one more article, and it's a short article that if you want to educate yourself on the situation in a very timely manner, you should read this article called The Honor Student from the Second Serve website, which is published by Ben Roethlisberger. He is an excellent sports journalist, an actual journalist that does investigations, how journalism should be handled. And he wrote this article, and I'll paraphrase some of the major talking points, but it's essentially is showcasing Chris Eubanks as one of the few players that actually educated himself on the Sinner case and other cases in the past. Chris Eubanks has done his homework, others not so much. And a couple of the main talking points here are that number one, Chris was interested because he had a gig with ESPN in understanding the situation. And because he went to college and he's an educated individual, wanted to educate himself on the anti-doping process. So there was a couple of open sessions at the Australian Open this past year for players to attend and learn about Sinner's case and other cases and the process about testing positive for substances. And during these two open sessions, there's only one person that showed up, and that was Chris Eubanks. And that is very telling. Now, it doesn't mean no one else is educating themselves through other means, but the ITIA had these sessions for players to attend, and one person showed up. So, in this sessions and in this article, they talk about the case with Marco Bartolotti, and that how easily accessible this information was, and that it was very similar to Sinner's case about no fault or negligence. And Chris also talks about how many players have been spreading misinformation, and that he's heard about it and he's tried to dispel that information, actually sending PDF files to other players, letting them know that they can look into the situation to show that this was actually a pretty textbook case and there was no preferential treatment whatsoever given to Sinner. And it would be even argued based on the punishment that he received twice that there was even more eyeballs on Sinner, and maybe his case was actually judged more harshly than some other cases in the past. This is a really short read. You should read it. And remember, what truly matters is to stop cheating. And it's not about these arbitrary 1 or 2 year penalties. Now, I'm not saying I know how to prevent all cheating and how to improve the process. That's not the point. But the only thing we care about as fans, are we preventing cheating from happening? And it's very clear when it comes to Sinner's case that there was no cheating whatsoever. So all these blowholes that are mentioning something, or the loudmouths on the Twitter sphere that are players, former players, and media pundits that are saying something critical of Sinner and the process that Sinner went through, they're just flat out wrong. Now, clearly, there is a perception problem inside the tour and outside the tour. And that also needs to be addressed. How do you address it if players are unwilling to attend these sessions or not educating themselves? I can't answer that. But there is a perception problem inside of tennis and outside of tennis that needs to be rectified as well. Now, I'm not suggesting the process is not flawed. It clearly has some issues. But this case with Sinner was relatively textbook and was not extraordinarily different than other cases in the past. So that is just completely false. So what I'm also loudly suggesting is the loudest players that are criticizing this are the real problem here. It's not so much about the process. There may be a problem with some transparency, but the bigger problem is the uneducated players themselves and the media as well, or people in the media who are just amplifying information without challenging it. And of course, they're doing it just for clicks, not to actually be honest or by trying to do their job or exposing right or wrong. This is simply just clickbait. So that's it for today's video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next ace.